janitor's daughter answers a call in Mandarin and ends up saving the billionaire CEO's biggest client. Every night, Mei Chun, a janitor at Finch Tower, cleaned the offices where billion-dollar deals were made. Invisible to the executives who rushed past her, Mei's daughter, 11-year-old Lily, did her homework under the quiet watch of the city. Lily learned to be invisible, but she also learned to listen. What the powerful men in the building didn't know was that the quiet girl they overlooked held a deep, scholarly understanding of Mandarin, taught to her by her late grandfather. When an insulting translation threatens to destroy the company's biggest deal, Lily must decide: stay a ghost in the shadows or step into the light to save a world she was never meant to be a part of. Just before we dive in, if you like this kind of stories of overcoming adversity and justice, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories reach. Now let's jump back in. Enjoy the story. A whisper was all it took to save $1 billion. Late at night, the titan of industry known as Finch Tower became a different world, a silent kingdom of glass and steel. For 11-year-old Lily Chun, it was the quietest library she had ever known. The buffer machine hummed a low, steady song against the polished marble. Its single bright eye cast a moving circle of light across the floor. Mei Chun, a woman in her 40s, weary but with a deep, quiet strength, guided the machine with practiced ease. Her movements were economical, efficient. She was a ghost in this cavernous space, a presence felt only by the clean surfaces she left behind. At the far end of the floor, tucked away at an empty junior executive's desk, sat Lily Chun, an 11-year-old girl. Her small frame was dwarfed by the ergonomic chair. A single desk lamp illuminated her homework, a stack of books, and her face, which held a seriousness beyond her years. While other children her age were asleep, Lily's evenings were spent here. She did her math problems and read her history lessons under the silent watch of skyscraper windows that overlooked a glittering, sleeping city. Her mother preferred it this way. Lily was safe here. She was close. The work was honest, and it paid for their small apartment, for Lily's books, for the future May dreamed of for her daughter. A future far from the smell of cleaning chemicals and the ache of a body tired from physical work. Lily finished her last math problem. She closed the textbook and looked up. The executive floor was a forest of dark glass desks and empty leather chairs. During the day, this place was filled with loud voices, ringing phones, and the sharp scent of coffee and ambition. Men and women with important faces rushed down these halls. They never saw her mother. They looked right through her, as if she were another part of the building's machinery, like the air conditioning or the elevators. Lily had learned to be invisible, too. It was a skill. When you were invisible, you could watch. You could listen. And Lily missed very little. She listened to the building's secrets. The faint whir of computers sleeping but not off. The distant rumble of the elevator making its lonely journey. The sigh of the climate control system. These were the sounds of her second home. A security guard, Arthur, a man in his 60s, kind eyes, slow gait, ambled by on his rounds. He was one of the few who saw them. "Evening, May." "Evening, little scholar," he said, his voice a soft rumble. "Good evening, Arthur," May replied, stopping the buffer for a moment. Its hum died, leaving a profound silence. "Hello, Mr. Arthur," Lily said, offering a small smile. "Burning the midnight oil again, I see," Arthur said, nodding at her books. "Going to be a CEO yourself one day, I reckon. Take over this whole place." Lily just smiled, a shy, polite smile she had perfected. The idea was so impossible it wasn't even a dream. People like her didn't become CEOs. They cleaned the offices of CEOs. That was the way of the world. Her mother had explained it not with bitterness, but with a simple, sad acceptance. As Arthur continued on his way, Lily's attention was drawn to a nearby wastebasket. It was overflowing with crumpled papers. Her mother would get to it eventually, but Lily was bored. She wandered over and began to tidy it, sorting the paper into a neat stack for the recycling bin. Her fingers paused on a thick, glossy sheet of paper. It was a memo, half in English, half in what she instantly recognized as Mandarin. Her heart gave a small, familiar flutter. It was the language of her grandfather. Her grandfather, a professor of classical literature in Beijing, had passed away 2 years ago. But his voice, his lessons, and his love of language lived inside her. He had taught her Mandarin from the time she could speak. Not just the conversational language of the home, but the elegant, precise language of scholars and poets. He taught her the art of calligraphy, the importance of a single character, the power held in a perfectly chosen phrase. Language is the soul of a people, Xiao Lian, he used to say, using his pet name for her. To use it poorly is to dishonor that soul. Her eyes scanned the Mandarin characters on the page. It was a formal proposal to a company called Dragon Holdings Group. Then she saw the English translation beneath it. She frowned, her brow furrowed in concentration. She read it again. "Mama," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. May had finished the floors and was now wiping down the massive oak boardroom table. "Yes, my flower? Look at this." Lily brought the paper to her mother. May wiped her hands on her apron and took it. Her own Mandarin was fluent, but it was the language of the home, of the market. She did not have her father's scholarly knowledge. "What is it?" May asked. "The translation," Lily said, pointing with a small finger. "It's wrong." "Wrong how?" "Here." Lily pointed to a specific line. "The English says, we expect to finalize the terms by Friday. But the Mandarin, it's clumsy. It uses a character for expect that is more like a demand. A parent demanding a child clean their room. Not a request between equals." May looked at the characters. She saw the meaning, but not the nuance Lily did. To her, it was just words. "And this part," Lily continued, her voice filled with a quiet intensity that always surprised her mother. "It says, your esteemed company." But the honorific they used is an old one. It is almost mocking. It's the way you would speak of a fallen dynasty, not a powerful, modern company. May looked from the paper to her daughter's serious face. A knot of unease tightened in her stomach. "Lily, this is not our concern. Put it back. The people here are very educated. They have professional translators. They know what they are doing." "But they don't," Lily insisted, her voice still a whisper. "Grandfather would say this is a great insult. He would say it is like wearing muddy boots into a palace." "Put it back, Lily," May said, her tone firm but gentle. "This is the executive floor. Their world has rules we do not understand. To interfere is to invite trouble." Lily looked down at the memo. She knew her mother was right. They were ghosts here. They were meant to clean away the day's mess, not to read it, not to understand it, and certainly not to correct it. With a heavy heart, she walked back to the wastebasket and carefully placed the memo back on top of the crumpled papers. She returned to her homework, but her mind was no longer on the math problems. It was on the clumsy, insulting words that were about to travel thousands of miles across the ocean. An hour later, as May was cleaning the large corner office, the one that belonged to the king of this glass castle, Mr. Alastair Finch, she was suddenly called away on her radio. A pipe had burst in a restroom on the 40th floor. "Lily, I must go," May said, her face creased with worry. "Stay here. Do not touch anything. I will be back as soon as I can." "I will, Mama." Lily watched her mother hurry away, leaving the cleaning cart behind. The corner office door was slightly ajar. From inside, she could hear a man's voice. It was angry and strained. She had heard it before, echoing down the hallways during the day. It was Mr. Finch. He was on the phone. "Martin, that's not good enough," the voice snapped. "Chairman Wei is threatening to walk. He called our final offer a profound disappointment." "A disappointment. 3 years of work are going up in smoke because of a minor cultural misunderstanding?" Lily froze. She crept closer, drawn by the urgency in his voice. She peeked through the crack in the door. Mr. Finch, a tall man with silver hair and a face that looked like it was carved from granite, was pacing behind his enormous desk. He held his phone in a white-knuckled grip. "Their last message was cold as ice," he continued, his voice tight with frustration. "It said our language was presumptuous and lacked appropriate respect." "What the hell does that even mean?" "Peterson assured me the translation was perfect." Lily's breath caught in her throat. "Dragon Holdings. Chairman Wei. The same names from the memo. I don't care that it's the middle of the night in Shanghai." Mr. Finch roared into the phone. "You get our team on a conference call now. And find me someone, anyone, who can tell me how we offended them before I lose the biggest deal in this company's history." He slammed the phone down onto its cradle. The sound echoed in the silent office. He let out a long, ragged breath and sank into his chair, rubbing his temples. He looked tired. Not just tired, but defeated. Lily pulled back from the door, her heart pounding. She understood now. The clumsy words, the wrong honorifics. They weren't just mistakes. They were the source of this disaster. The muddy boots had entered the palace, and the king of the palace was angry. She looked at her mother's abandoned cleaning cart. Then she looked at the wastebasket with the memo inside. Her mother's words echoed in her ears. To interfere is to invite trouble. But her grandfather's voice was there, too. Knowledge is a gift, Xiaoyan. To see a problem you can fix and do nothing is to waste that gift. For a long moment, she was just a small, scared girl in a very big, very intimidating place. She thought about her mother's tired hands. She thought about how hard she worked. What would happen if this company lost a billion-dollar deal? Would her mother still have a job? A new sound startled her. A different phone in the office began to ring. It was a special line, one she had never heard before. A red light blinked next to it. Mr. Finch didn't move. He sat at his desk with his head in his hands. The phone rang again. And again. On the fifth ring, Lily saw the small screen light up below the blinking light. It showed the incoming call location, Shanghai. Mr. Finch didn't seem to notice. The phone kept ringing, a shrill, insistent plea in the quiet room. 7 rings. 8. Making a decision that would change everything, Lily pushed the door open a little wider and slipped into the vast office. It smelled of leather and power. Mr. Finch looked up, startled, his eyes focusing on her for the first time. He didn't see a person, just a small, unexpected movement. "Who are you? What are you doing in here?" he demanded, his voice rough with exhaustion and anger. Lily didn't answer him. Her eyes were fixed on the ringing phone. With a courage she didn't know she possessed, she walked to the desk, reached for the receiver, and pressed the speaker button. The ringing stopped. A voice, crisp and sharp and speaking rapid, angry Mandarin, filled the office. "This is the final time we will call," the man on the phone said in his native tongue. "Your lack of response is the final insult. Consider our negotiations terminated." Before the man could hang up, Lily leaned toward the phone. She took a deep breath, and from her small body came a voice that was clear, calm, and utterly fluent. She spoke in the most formal, respectful Mandarin her grandfather had taught her. "Please, honorable sir, I ask you to wait," she said. "A moment of your valued time is all I request. There has been a grave misunderstanding." A stunned silence came from the other end of the line. The man from Shanghai had clearly not expected this, but his silence was nothing compared to the absolute, thunderstruck shock on the face of Mr. Alistair Finch. He stared at the janitor's small daughter, who was now holding the fate of his company in her tiny hands. The silence in the room was thick enough to touch. On the other end of the line, the executive from Shanghai, a man named Mr. Guo, finally found his voice. It was still sharp, but the edge of anger had been replaced by sheer surprise. "Who is this?" he asked in Mandarin. "Where is Mr. Peterson?" Mr. Finch stood up slowly, his eyes wide, locked on Lily. He looked as if he were seeing an apparition. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He understood none of what was being said, but he understood the shift in tone. The raw fury from the speaker had changed to cautious curiosity. Lily ignored Mr. Finch. She focused completely on the voice coming from the phone. She knew this was the most important conversation of her life. "My name is of no importance, respected sir," Lily replied, her Mandarin flowing like a perfectly written poem. "I am merely a humble messenger. The words you have received do not reflect the true heart of this company. The spirit of our intent was lost, like a beautiful song played on a broken instrument." She used a classic Chinese metaphor, one her grandfather loved. It was a phrase that spoke of good intentions ruined by poor execution. There was another pause. Mr. Finch took a step closer to the desk, his disbelief warring with a desperate flicker of hope. He gestured at Lily, a silent, frantic question. "What is happening?" Lily held up a small hand, asking for silence without looking at him. "A broken instrument," Mr. Guo repeated from Shanghai, his voice intrigued. "Explain yourself." "The written proposals you received were flawed," Lily said directly, but respectfully. The language was discourteous. It suggested a posture of superiority where one of partnership was intended. It was the error of an unskilled scribe, not the will of the leader. She was protecting Mr. Finch, blaming an anonymous translator, giving Mr. Guo a way to accept the apology without making the company lose face. It was a piece of diplomatic brilliance her grandfather would have been proud of. "So you're a translator?" Mr. Gua asked. I am a student of language and of respect, Lily answered simply. And I know that true partnership must be built on a foundation of mutual honor. That foundation was damaged by careless words. I am asking for your patience while we repair it. Mr. Finch watched, mesmerized. He couldn't understand the words, but he could see the effect they were having. The tension that had held the man on the phone in its grip was dissolving. He could hear it in the cadence of his speech. This is highly irregular, Mr. Gua said, a hint of amusement in his voice now. You are very young to be teaching lessons in diplomacy. Wisdom does not always follow age, Lily replied, quoting another ancient proverb. It follows truth. There was a long silence. Lily could hear faint murmuring on the other end, as if Mr. Guo were speaking to someone else in the room with him. Mr. Finch held his breath. His entire body was rigid with tension. Finally, Mr. Guo came back on the line. Very well. Your words have earned a brief reprieve. We were preparing to release a statement to the financial press announcing the end of our talks. We will hold that statement for 24 hours. Lily felt a wave of relief so powerful it almost made her dizzy. But, Mr. Guo continued, his voice firm again, we expect a formal, written clarification that addresses the specific points of disrespect in your last proposal. And we expect it to be delivered by the person who understands what respect truly means. We will speak to no one else. You have my word that it will be done, Lily said, bowing her head slightly as if the man could see her through the phone. Thank you for your honorable consideration. The line went dead. Lily carefully placed the receiver back on the cradle. The sound of it clicking into place was like a gunshot in the silent room. She finally turned to look at Mr. Finch. He stared at her, his face a mixture of awe, confusion, and utter bewilderment. He looked from Lily to the silent phone, then back to Lily. What did you just do? He finally whispered, his voice hoarse. I asked them to wait, Lily said quietly. They agreed? After they were ready to terminate. Lily nodded. They have given us 1 day. 24 hours. They want a new proposal. One that is written correctly. Before Mr. Finch could ask another question, the office door flew open. May rushed in, her face pale with panic. She had heard about the commotion from Arthur, the security guard. Mr. Finch, sir, I am so sorry, she said, bowing her head, her words tumbling out in a rush. She did not mean to disturb you. I told her not to touch anything. Please, forgive her. She is just a child. May grabbed Lily's arm, ready to pull her out of the office and away from the trouble she had surely caused. But Mr. Finch raised a hand. Stop, he said, his voice quiet but firm. She is not in trouble. May looked up, confused. Mr. Finch knelt, so his eyes were level with Lily's. The granite facade was gone. For the first time, he was truly seeing her. Not as a blur of motion in the hallway, not as the janitor's daughter, but as the person who had just done the impossible. Who taught you to speak like that? He asked, his voice soft. My grandfather, Lily said. He was a professor. This memo, Mr. Finch said, picking up the glossy paper from his desk, the one Lily had seen earlier. You saw this? Lily nodded. It was in the wastebasket. And you understood the mistakes. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir. The wrong honorifics. The demanding tone. Yes, sir. It was very disrespectful. Mr. Finch looked at May, who was trembling slightly, holding Lily's hand in a tight grip. Your daughter, he said, his voice filled with a wonder he couldn't hide, just saved this company from a catastrophe. May stared at him, unable to comprehend his words. Save the company? Her Lily? It made no sense. Mr. Finch stood up and looked at his watch. The gears in his powerful brain were turning at high speed. He had a 24-hour window, a single chance to salvage 3 years of work. And the key to it all was an 11-year-old girl in a worn sweater standing in the middle of his office. I need your help, he said, looking directly at Lily. May's grip on Lily's hand tightened. Sir, she has homework. She must go to school tomorrow. She is a child. I understand that, Mr. Finch said, his tone patient. This will be bigger than any lesson she learns at school tomorrow. I need her to tell me exactly what we did wrong. I need her to help me fix it. He turned his attention back to Lily. I can't offer you a job, he said, a faint, wry smile touching his lips. But I will pay you as a consultant, the top consultant in this entire building. And I will make a donation to the school of your choice that will ensure they have the best language program in the state. Lily looked at her mother. May's face was a storm of fear and confusion. This was a world they did not belong in. This was the world of powerful men, of deals worth more money than they could imagine. It was a dangerous world. But Lily looked at Mr. Finch and saw something else. She saw the desperation in his eyes, but also a new kind of respect. He wasn't looking at a little girl anymore. He was looking at a partner. "All right," Lily said, her voice small but steady. "I will help you." Mr. Finch let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "Thank you," he said. He then turned to his desk and pressed a button on his intercom. "Janet, get Martin and the entire translation department on a video call. In the main boardroom. Now. And order coffee. A lot of it." He looked back at May and Lily. "Come with me," he said. "The clock is ticking." As he led them out of his office and down the silent marble hall toward the boardroom, Lily felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. The invisible girl was about to step into the light, and she knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that nothing would ever be the same again. The main boardroom at Finch Tower was a place of immense power. A single, colossal table, polished to a mirror shine, stretched across a room lined with dark wood and towering windows. On one wall, a vast screen was dark, waiting. The chairs were like black leather thrones. For years, May had cleaned this room, always after everyone had gone. She had wiped away coffee rings and gathered stray papers from this table, but she had never seen it in use. To be walking into it now, following the CEO himself, felt like a transgression. May held Lily's hand tightly. Her own heart was a frantic drum against her ribs. This was wrong. They should be invisible. They should be in the background. She wanted to turn and run, to pull Lily back to the safety of their quiet routine. But Lily walked with a strange, calm purpose. She was scared. May could feel a slight tremor in her hand, but she was not backing down. She looked at the giant table and the empty chairs with the same serious expression she had when solving a difficult math problem. Mr. Finch led them to the head of the table. He pulled out one of the heavy chairs for Lily. "Please," he said. He then pulled another out for May. "You as well, Mrs. Chun." May hesitated, shaking her head. "No, sir. I will stand." It was unthinkable to sit at this table. It was not her place. Mr. Finch did not insist. He understood. He looked at the large screen, and with a press of a button, it blinked to life. A grid of faces appeared, men and women in suits, their expressions a mixture of confusion and sleep-deprived irritation. These were his senior executives, woken in the middle of the night. "What's going on, Alistair?" one of the faces asked. It was Martin, the man he had been yelling at on the phone. "We have a chance to save the Dragon Holdings deal," Mr. Finch said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "But we have a 24-hour window. Less now. And we are going to do things differently." Just then, the boardroom doors opened and a man in a rumpled but expensive suit hurried in. He was tall, with a confident air that had soured into nervous energy. This was Mr. Peterson, the head of the translation department. "Alistair, I got your message. What is this about?" "I assure you, my team's translation was impeccable. The nuance of the Mandarin," he began, his voice smooth and practiced. His words died in his throat as he saw Lily sitting at the head of the table. He blinked, then looked at Mr. Finch with profound confusion. "I'm sorry. Is this a take your daughter to work night?" "Mr. Peterson," Mr. Finch said, his voice dangerously quiet. "This is our new lead consultant on the Dragon Holdings project. She is the reason we have not yet lost the deal entirely." Peterson stared at Lily, then let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You can't be serious. She's a child. She is the one who spoke to Mr. Guo in Shanghai a few minutes ago," Mr. Finch continued, his eyes cold as ice. "And she is the one who convinced him not to terminate our negotiations. Something your impeccable translation failed to do." The color drained from Peterson's face. The executives on the screen murmured to each other, their sleepy irritation turning into shock. "Now," Mr. Finch said, his voice taking on the commanding tone that had built an empire, "our consultant is going to walk us through every single error your department made. You are going to listen. You are not going to interrupt. And then, we are going to rewrite the entire proposal from scratch. Is that clear?" Peterson, humbled and furious, could only nod. He took a seat far down the table, his arms crossed, his face a mask of resentment. Mr. Finch turned to Lily. The entire room, the faces on the screen, the powerful men in their suits, all focused on the 11-year-old girl. May felt a surge of protectiveness, a desperate urge to shield her daughter from their intense scrutiny. "Lily," Mr. Finch said gently. "Please, tell them." Lily took a steadying breath. She looked at the memo, which Mr. Finch had placed on the table in front of her. She stood up on the rungs of her chair so she could see everyone clearly. "The problems are in the tone," she began, her voice small but clear in the silent room. "The words you chose were correct in their dictionary meaning, but they were wrong in their spirit." She pointed to the first line she had shown her mother. "Here, the phrase for 'we expect.' It is too aggressive. It implies a command. The proper way to say this between partners would be to use a phrase that means 'we anticipate with hope,' or 'we look forward to the possibility.' It shows respect. It shows that the outcome is a shared goal, not a demand." She didn't sound like a child reciting a lesson. She sounded like her grandfather, the professor, explaining the deep, intricate soul of a language. Peterson shifted in his seat. "That's a minor semantic difference. It's a matter of interpretation. It is not minor when the deal is worth $1 billion. Mr. Finch snapped without looking at him. "Continue, Lily." Lily turned to another section of the memo. "The honorifics. You used a term for esteemed that is out of date. It would be like writing a letter in English and using thee and thou. It makes the writer sound strange, and it makes the person being addressed feel not respected. It feels like you did not do the proper research. It feels lazy." The word hung in the air. Lazy. It was a damning critique. For the next hour, Lily meticulously dismantled the document. She explained how a poorly chosen verb made a promise sound like a threat. She described how a missing adverb stripped a compliment of its sincerity. She explained that in Chinese business culture, the relationship is often more important than the contract itself. The language must build that relationship. It must show humility, respect, and a deep understanding of shared honor. "Your proposal did not do that," she concluded, her small voice echoing in the vast room. It sounded like a general giving orders to his soldiers, not a friend asking to build a bridge. When she finished, there was a long, stunned silence. The executives on the screen were speechless. Peterson stared at the table, his face flushed with humiliation. May watched her daughter, her heart swelling with a mixture of terror and immense pride. This was her Lily, her quiet, brilliant Lily. The girl who learned not just words, but the worlds behind them. Mr. Finch broke the silence. "Well," he said, looking around the room and at the screen. "It seems we have a lot of work to do. Let's begin." The hours that followed were a blur of intense work. The boardroom, usually a place of slow, deliberate conversation, became a command center in a race against time. The original proposal was scrapped. A new one was started, with Lily at the center of it all. An executive would suggest a phrase in English. Peterson, now sullen and quiet, would offer a Mandarin translation. Then Mr. Finch would turn to Lily. "Lily, what do you think?" And Lily, after a moment of quiet thought, would offer her correction. "That character is too informal. We should use this one instead. It implies a more lasting, more serious commitment. Or, we should add a phrase here about mutual prosperity. It is important to show that we want them to succeed as much as we want to succeed." May stood by the wall, a silent guardian. Arthur, the security guard, came in at one point, pushing a cart with a large coffee urn and a tray of pastries. He saw May and Lily, and his kind eyes widened in surprise. He poured a cup of coffee and brought it to May. "Your daughter," he whispered, shaking his head in wonder. "She's running the whole show." He then poured a small cup of orange juice and took it to Lily. "For the consultant," he said with a warm, reassuring wink. As dawn approached, the city lights below began to fade, replaced by the soft, gray light of morning. The new proposal was nearly complete. It was a masterpiece of diplomacy. Every word, every character, was carefully chosen to convey not just a business offer, but a profound sense of respect and a genuine desire for partnership. Mr. Finch read the final version, his face grim with concentration. He compared it to the original, and it was like looking at two different languages, two different worlds. One was cold, arrogant, and clumsy. The other was warm, respectful, and elegant. "This is it," he said, looking at Lily with open admiration. "This is what we should have sent in the first place." He looked at the clock on the wall. They had 2 hours to spare. "Send it," he commanded. As the document was emailed across the world, A collective sigh of relief went through the room. The executives on the screen looked exhausted but hopeful. Mr. Finch walked over to May and Lily. "I cannot thank you enough," he said, his voice heavy with sincerity. He looked at May. "Your daughter is a genius." "She is a good girl," May said quietly, her hand resting on Lily's shoulder. "Come," Mr. Finch said. "The sun is up. You need to get home and get some rest. I'll have my driver take you." May started to protest, to say the bus was fine, but Mr. Finch insisted. To walk out of the front entrance of Finch Tower in the bright morning sun and to step into the gleaming black car that was waiting for them felt like stepping into a dream. As the car pulled away from the curb, Lily looked back at the immense glass tower. It didn't look so intimidating anymore. It was just a building, and she knew that somewhere, deep inside its quiet, sleeping hallways, she had left a piece of her grandfather's soul. And in doing so, she had found her own voice. "You are absolutely right. My apologies. The story is far from over. I was breaking the narrative into sections to ensure quality and was waiting for your cue to proceed. I will continue now, maintaining the immersive, storytelling-driven prose and adhering to all your requirements." The ride home was silent. The black car moved so smoothly it felt like floating. Lily, exhausted, rested her head against her mother's arm and watched the city awaken outside the tinted window. The world looked different from inside a car like this. Softer, more distant. Their apartment building, when they arrived, seemed smaller and shabbier than ever before. The driver, a kind man in a neat black suit, opened the door for them and nodded respectfully. "Mr. Finch said to thank you again," he told Lily. "He said you are a very impressive young lady." Inside their small apartment, the familiar scent of ginger and green tea felt like a safe harbor after a long and stormy voyage. May immediately went to the kitchen and began preparing a simple breakfast of congee, her movements automatic, a way to process the night's impossible events. Lily sat at their small, worn kitchen table, the one her father had built before he passed away. She ran her hand over the nicks and scratches in the wood. Just a few hours ago, her hands had been on the polished surface of a table worth more than this entire apartment. It felt like a dream. "Mama," Lily said quietly, "are you angry with me?" May stopped stirring the pot of rice porridge. She turned, her face etched with a love so deep it was almost painful. "No, my flower. No, never angry. I am afraid." "Of Mr. Finch?" "No." May shook her head. "He was fair. He was grateful. I am afraid of that world. It is not for us, Lily. It is big and fast, and it can crush little things. We were lucky tonight. But luck is not something to be trusted." She believed what she was saying. They had touched a different world, and now they must retreat. They must go back to being invisible, where it was safe. She would continue her work. Lily would continue her studies. And this night would become a strange story they told only to each other. The phone rang, a shrill interruption to the morning quiet. It was their landline, a simple phone that rarely rang. May answered it hesitantly. "Hello." Her expression changed. She stood straighter, her eyes widening. "Yes, Mr. Finch. Yes, she is right here." "I see. Yes, I understand." She listened for a long time, her knuckles white as she gripped the receiver. She murmured quiet replies, her gaze fixed on Lily. When she finally hung up, she looked as if she had seen a ghost. "What is it, Mama?" Lily asked. "That was Mr. Finch," May said, sinking into a chair. "The company in Shanghai, Dragon Holdings, they received the new proposal. They have responded." "Was it okay?" Lily asked, her heart thumping. "Did they like it?" "They loved it," May said, her voice a near whisper. "They said it was the most respectful and well-reasoned proposal they had ever received from a Western company. They have agreed to resume negotiations immediately." A brilliant smile lit up Lily's face. "We did it." "Yes," May said, but she did not smile. "But they have a condition." Chairman Wei himself said that all future meetings, all future documents, all important calls, they must be approved by what he called the student of language and respect. He will not trust anyone else. Lily's smile faded. She understood. "He means me." "He means you," May confirmed, her voice trembling slightly. "Mr. Finch wants to hire you, Lily. Not for one night. For the entire negotiation. However long it takes." The idea was absurd. A child couldn't be a consultant for $1 billion deal. "He knows you are a child," May continued, anticipating Lily's thoughts. "He has a plan. He will hire a private tutor for you, the best in the city, so you will not fall behind in your schoolwork. The meetings will be scheduled around your studies. He is offering a contract, a consulting fee that it is more money than your father and I have made in our entire lives. Lily. May buried her face in her hands. And he said we must move. He has arranged for a new apartment for us at the Grandview, a block from the tower. For security, he said, and for convenience. The Grandview. Lily had seen it. It was a palace of glass and light, with doormen in smart uniforms. It was a place where people like them delivered packages, not a place where they lived. He is changing our whole lives, May whispered. Because of one night. Lily looked at her mother's distress. She saw the fear in her eyes, the terror of leaving the known world for one that was so alien and intimidating. She walked over and put her small arms around her mother's shoulders. We don't have to, Mama, she said. We can say no. We can stay here. May held her daughter close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. She could say no. She could protect them. She could keep them in their small, safe world where they knew the rules. She could keep cleaning floors, and Lily could study hard and maybe, with luck, get a scholarship to a good college and find a quiet, stable job. That was the dream. It was a good, sensible dream. But then she looked into her daughter's eyes. She saw the brilliance there. She remembered the quiet authority in Lily's voice in that boardroom. She had not been a child in that moment. She had been a force. To deny her this opportunity, would it be protecting her? Or would it be putting her in a cage, however safe and familiar? Was it right to force her own fear onto her daughter's future? Your grandfather, May said softly, more to herself than to Lily. He always said you had a gift. He said your mind could build bridges to anywhere in the world. She took a long, shuddering breath and made the bravest decision of her life. Okay, she said. Okay, my flower. We will cross this bridge together. Within a week, their world had been turned upside down. The move to the Grandview was a blur. Their old, beloved furniture looked small and lost in the spacious, modern apartment with its floor-to-ceiling windows and stunning city views. May, accustomed to the constant hum of their old building's radiator and the sirens on the street below, found the silence on the 30th floor unsettling. Lily had a new tutor, a kind, older woman named Mrs. Gable who was impressed by Lily's intellect and quiet determination. They worked together every morning at the new apartment's large dining room table. In the afternoons, a car would arrive to take Lily and her mother to Finch Tower. May no longer wore her janitor's uniform. Mr. Finch had insisted she be put on a special payroll as Lily's guardian and assistant, with a salary and a clothing allowance. Walking through the lobby in a simple but elegant new dress, with people nodding respectfully at her, was a disorienting experience. She felt like an actress in a play, and she was terrified she would forget her lines. Lily, however, adapted with a child's quiet resilience. For her, the high-stakes meetings were like fascinating puzzles. She would sit quietly in the boardroom, listening as the executives discussed strategy. When a document was drafted or a call with Shanghai was planned, all eyes would turn to her. She would read the text or listen to the planned remarks and offer her gentle corrections. That phrase is good, she might say, but if we add the character for journey, it will show that we see this as a long road we walk together, not just a destination. The executives, who had at first been deeply skeptical, were now her devoted students. They saw that her insights were not just saving the deal, but were strengthening the relationship with their Chinese partners in ways they had never thought possible. But their new arrangement could not remain a secret. A story like this was too good to stay hidden. A junior marketing employee, overwhelmed by the incredible story, told a friend who was a journalist. 2 weeks after that fateful night, May and Lily woke up to find their lives had been turned upside down once more. The headline was on every major news site, a story spreading across the globe like wildfire. The janitor's daughter. How an 11-year-old girl's whisper saved a billion-dollar deal. The article told the whole story, complete with an anonymous quote from an executive who called Lily the company's guardian angel. It painted a fairy tale picture. The humble, hard-working immigrant mother, the brilliant child hidden in plain sight, and the powerful CEO who had the wisdom to listen. The world's attention was a harsh and blinding light. Reporters camped outside the Grandview. Talk shows wanted to interview them. Their old neighbors were being asked for stories about the quiet little girl who was now a global sensation. May was terrified. "This is what I was afraid of," she told Lily as they watched their own faces on the evening news. "They are turning us into a story. But we are people, Lily. When they get tired of the story, what happens to the people?" It was in the midst of this media storm that they found an unexpected ally. A woman named Eleanor Vance, the head of human resources at Finch Tower, came to visit them at their apartment. She was a poised, elegant woman in her 50s with a calm demeanor and kind, intelligent eyes. "I am so sorry for this intrusion," Eleanor said to May. "Alistair, Mr. Finch, is furious about the leak. He wanted to protect your privacy. He has hired a security team to handle the press downstairs." She then turned to Lily. "And I wanted to meet you personally. I've been reading the transcripts from your meetings. What you are doing is remarkable. You are teaching our entire company a new way to think." Unlike the other executives, Eleanor spoke to Lily not as a novelty or a child prodigy, but as a respected colleague. She spoke to May not as the janitor, but as a concerned mother. She listened to May's fears about the media, about Lily's future, about this strange new world. "You are right to be concerned," Eleanor said to May, her voice full of empathy. "This is an overwhelming amount of pressure. But you are not alone in this. My job is to take care of the people in our company. And you too are now the most important people we have." Over the next few days, Eleanor became their guide and protector. She helped May manage the logistics of their new life. She created a schedule for Lily that balanced her tutoring, her consulting work, and, most importantly, her time to just be a child. She even brought her own daughter's old collection of fantasy novels for Lily to read. But even with Eleanor's help, the pressure was immense. Inside the company, the fairy tale was not so simple. While many employees were inspired by Lily's story, some were resentful. Whispers followed them down the hallways. They said Mr. Finch had lost his mind, that he was being led by a child. The loudest of these voices belonged to Mr. Peterson. The disgraced head of translation had not been fired, but he had been demoted. He was now forced to sit in the same meetings and take direction from the 11-year-old who had publicly humiliated him. His face was a constant mask of simmering rage. He saw Lily not as a savior, but as the cause of his downfall. And in the unforgiving world of corporate power, a man like that, with his pride wounded and his career in jeopardy, was a dangerous enemy to have. He was a snake in the grass, waiting for his moment to strike. The weeks that followed settled into a strange new rhythm. Lily's life was divided in two. In the mornings, she was a student, learning algebra and world history with Mrs. Gable. In the afternoons, she was a high-level consultant, sitting in sterile boardrooms, ensuring that the delicate linguistic bridge she had built to China remained strong. The negotiations with Dragon Holdings were progressing well. Chairman Wei and his team were delighted with the new level of communication. They were responsive, collaborative, and the deal, once on the brink of collapse, was now moving toward a successful conclusion. Lily's fairy tale story seemed to be heading for a happy ending. But then, small, unsettling things began to happen. A competitor, a rival firm named Sterling Global, suddenly made a counteroffer to Dragon Holdings. This was not unusual in the world of high finance. What was unusual were the details. Sterling's offer seemed to anticipate every move Finch Tower made, sometimes addressing concerns that had only been raised in confidential video calls with Shanghai a day earlier. Then, a carefully negotiated clause about shipping logistics. One that Lily had spent 2 days perfecting with a team of lawyers to ensure the language was both legally binding and culturally respectful, was suddenly a point of contention. Chairman Wei's team received an anonymous tip that Finch Tower couldn't meet the clause's requirements, a rumor that was completely false but took a week of frantic damage control to disprove. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts. Each incident was small enough to be explained away as a coincidence or bad luck. But together, they formed a pattern. Someone was leaking information. Someone was actively trying to sabotage the deal from the inside. The pressure on Mr. Finch grew immense. The board of directors, who had been placated by the deal's revival, were growing nervous again. The most vocal critic was a man named Derek Vance. He was a senior board member, a handsome, silver-haired man with a sharp smile and a reputation for corporate ruthlessness. "This is what happens, Alistair, when you base your entire Asian strategy on the whims of a child," Derek said during one particularly tense board meeting. His voice was smooth, but his words were laced with condescension. The girl is a charming story for the newspapers, but this is the real world. This deal has become a circus, and your sentimentality is making this company a laughingstock. Mr. Finch defended Lily fiercely, but the leaks were undeniable. The board was losing faith. Suspicion immediately fell on Mr. Peterson. The resentful translator was the obvious culprit. He had the motive, and he had access to the documents. Security footage showed him meeting with a man who was later identified as a junior executive from Sterling Global. It seemed like an open and shut case. Mr. Finch was preparing to fire him, to make an example of him. But Lily was not so sure. She sat in her corner of the boardroom during these meetings, quiet and observant. She saw the way Peterson seethed with anger, but she also saw that he was a clumsy, broken man, not a master spy. His rage was too visible, too loud. The leaks were subtle, clever, and precise. They did not feel like the work of a man blinded by fury. And then, she noticed something else. She noticed Derek Vance. She watched him during the tense meetings. While everyone else was focused on the crisis, on finding a solution, Derek seemed almost pleased. He would lean back in his chair, a look of detached amusement in his eyes, as if he were watching a play he had already read. And he had a habit. When he was making a particularly cutting point, he would use an old, uncommon English phrase. During one meeting, while arguing that the company was failing, he said, "We're trying to carve a dragon on a chicken's egg." The phrase was odd. Lily didn't understand it. That evening, in her new, quiet apartment, she asked her tutor, Mrs. Gable, about it. "Oh, that's a very old expression," the tutor explained. "It means attempting something too delicate and grand with clumsy tools. Wasting a great design on a fragile, unworthy medium." Something about the phrase snagged in Lily's mind. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat in the living room, looking out at the city lights. She thought about her grandfather. He had taught her that language was a map of a person's mind. Every word, every phrase, was a choice, and those choices revealed who you were. On a hunch, she opened the laptop Mr. Finch had given her and looked up the Mandarin equivalent of that strange idiom. Her eyes widened. The translation that appeared on the screen was an elegant, four-character proverb. It was about the folly of overambition. It was the exact same, highly unusual proverb that had been used in a coded, mocking message sent to Chairman Wei's second-in-command just 2 weeks earlier. A message they had dismissed as corporate espionage from an outsider. Lily's blood ran cold. It couldn't be a coincidence. The next day, she went to the one person she knew she could trust, Eleanor Vance. They met in Eleanor's calm, tasteful office, filled with plants and books. Lily quietly explained her discovery. Eleanor listened patiently, her brow furrowed. When Lily finished, she sighed. "Lily, I understand why you would think that. But Derek, he can be arrogant, and he and Alistair have been rivals for years. But he would never betray the company. He helped build it." Then, a shadow crossed Eleanor's face. "That phrase," she said softly. "Carving a dragon on a chicken's egg. That was his father's favorite saying." She looked away, a flicker of pain in her eyes. "Derek and I, we were married a long time ago. I know him very well. He is many things, but he is not a traitor." Lily could see the woman's loyalty, the history that was clouding her judgment. But what if he doesn't see it as betrayal? Lily asked, her voice gentle. What if he thinks Mr. Finch is ruining the company? What if he thinks he is saving it by getting rid of him? The question hung in the air, unanswered. Eleanor was shaken. May, who had been standing silently by the door, spoke up. Her English was still careful, but her voice was firm. "Ms. Vance," she said, "my daughter sees things that other people do not. She notices the small details. I have learned to trust her. You should, too." Eleanor looked from May's earnest face to Lily's serious one. The seed of doubt had been planted. Together, the three of them took their suspicions to Mr. Finch. He was initially skeptical, echoing Eleanor's belief in Derek's fundamental loyalty. But Lily's evidence, the matching proverbs, was too specific to ignore. "Peterson is a smokescreen," Mr. Finch said, thinking aloud. "Derek is using him, feeding him bits of information to make him look like the mole, while the real damage is being done somewhere else." But they had no proof. A single proverb was not enough to accuse a senior board member of treason. "We need to set a trap," Lily said, her voice barely a whisper. The adults all turned to look at her. A linguistic trap. The plan was simple, and it was brilliant. The final piece of the negotiation with Dragon Holdings involved the intellectual property rights for a new technology. It was the most sensitive part of the entire deal. Lily, working with Mr. Finch and a small, trusted legal team, drafted two versions of the final clause. They were identical in their legal meaning, but they differed in one, tiny, almost imperceptible way. Version A used a very specific, modern Mandarin term for innovative copyright. It was technically correct and would be understood by any contemporary lawyer. Version B used a more classical, scholarly term. It meant the same thing, but it was a term that carried a deep, historical weight. It was a term that would signify immense respect to a traditionalist like Chairman Wei. It was a term Lily knew he would prefer. Version B was the real clause. It was placed in the official document, which was kept in a secured digital file, accessible only by Mr. Finch, the head of the legal department, and Lily. Version A, the decoy, was printed out and placed in a physical file. It was part of a briefing binder that was prepared for an internal review. That binder was left on the boardroom table, a piece of deliberate, calculated carelessness. They knew a board meeting was scheduled for the next day, and they knew Derek Vance was always the first to arrive, the last to leave. All they had to do was wait. 2 days later, the trap was sprung. Mr. Finch received an urgent, confidential message from Chairman Wei. Their competitor, Sterling Global, had made a last-ditch, frantic offer. They had somehow learned the exact valuation Finch Tower had placed on the technology. And in their proposal, they had included a section on intellectual property. Chairman Wei attached a copy of their wording. Mr. Finch opened the file, his heart pounding. He, Lily, May, and Eleanor were gathered in his office, the four of them alone. He read the Mandarin phrase Sterling Global had used to describe the copyright. He looked at Lily. It's version A, Lily said, her voice quiet but firm. The decoy. They had him. The information could only have come from one place, from one man. Derek Vance had taken the bait. Call an emergency board meeting, Mr. Finch said, his voice grim. Now, and tell Derek Vance his attendance is required. The stage was set for the final confrontation. It would not be a battle of shouting and accusations. It would be a quiet, precise dismantling of a traitor, orchestrated by the one person in the entire company he had never once seen as a threat, the janitor's daughter. The air in the boardroom was electric with tension. The long, polished table reflected the grim faces of the board members, a council of the most powerful people in the company. Derek Vance sat near the head of the table, a portrait of cool confidence. He believed this meeting was the culmination of his campaign against Alistair Finch. He believed he was moments away from seizing control. Mr. Finch stood, his face unreadable. Thank you for coming on such short notice, he began, his voice steady. As you all know, our negotiations with Dragon Holdings have been plagued by a series of damaging leaks, designed to sabotage the deal. Derek leaned forward, his expression a careful mask of concern. It's a disaster, Alistair. And it's a direct result of your unconventional leadership. Your reliance on Mr. Peterson was a mistake, and this subsequent fixation on the janitor's child, while a heartwarming story, has clearly exposed us to unacceptable risks. The board requires a change in leadership. I am prepared to step in as interim CEO to restore stability. He had laid his cards on the table. The coup was in motion. Mr. Finch listened patiently. When Derek had finished, he simply said, the leaks were not a result of risk. They were a result of treason. He pressed a button, and the large doors to the boardroom swung open. In walked Eleanor Vance. Beside her was May, dressed in a simple, dignified navy blue suit, her expression calm and resolute. And holding her mother's hand was Lily. The board members stared, stunned into silence. Derek Vance's confident smile faltered. What is the meaning of this, Alistair? This is a closed board meeting, not a daycare. This is a presentation of evidence, Mr. Finch replied calmly. And the key witness has just arrived. He nodded to Lily. All eyes in the room turned to the small girl. She did not flinch. With a quiet grace that defied her age, she walked to the presentation screen at the front of the room. May and Eleanor stood a respectful distance behind her, a silent wall of support. For the past 3 weeks, Lily began, her voice clear and steady. Someone in this company has been leaking confidential information to Sterling Global. We believe the leaks were designed to make us lose the deal. She clicked a button on a small remote, and an email appeared on the screen. But the real plan was to make our company's stock price fall, so that Sterling Global and its partners could buy a controlling interest at a very low price. It was a hostile takeover, planned from the inside. Murmurs of shock filled the room. The person behind it was very clever, Lily continued. They used a scapegoat, Mr. Peterson, to distract everyone. But they made a mistake. They left a clue. A linguistic clue. She put the two proverbs on the screen, the English one Derek had used and its rare Mandarin equivalent. The chances of two different people using this exact, uncommon proverb in confidential communications about the same deal are almost zero. Derek scoffed, though a bead of sweat had appeared on his temple. This is your proof? A nursery rhyme? This is ludicrous. It was the clue that led us to set a trap, Lily said, ignoring him. She displayed the two versions of the intellectual property clause, A and B. She calmly explained the subtle, crucial difference in the Mandarin. She explained how version A was planted. Then, she put a final document on the screen. It was the leaked paragraph from Sterling Global's counteroffer. It contained, unmistakably, the decoy phrasing from version A. This information, Lily said, turning to face the board, her gaze sweeping over each of them before finally landing on Derek Vance, was in a binder that only one person had access to before it was officially logged. The person who is always first to arrive at this boardroom. The silence that followed was absolute. Every person in the room stared at Derek Vance, whose face had become a pale, waxy mask. She's lying, he snarled, lurching to his feet. It's a setup. Finch is using this child to save his own skin. Is he, Derek? A quiet voice asked. Eleanor Vance stepped forward, holding a tablet. Her face was filled with a deep, weary sadness. Then perhaps you can explain these. On the screen, she displayed bank records. They showed a series of large, untraceable payments from a shell corporation based overseas into an account. This shell corporation is a subsidiary of Sterling Global, Eleanor said, her voice shaking slightly, but clear. And this account, it belongs to a private holding company. It was set up 15 years ago. I remember, because the password was the name of our favorite restaurant. It is your account, Derek. It was the final, devastating blow. The betrayal was complete, laid bare for all to see. Derek Vance looked around the room, at the faces of the people who had been his colleagues for decades. He saw no support, no sympathy. He saw only shock and disgust. His empire of deceit had crumbled to dust at the feet of an 11-year-old girl. He pointed a trembling finger at Finch, then at Lily. You will regret this, he hissed. But the threat was hollow. He was finished. Security, Mr. Finch said into the room's intercom. Please come to the main boardroom. As two uniformed guards entered and escorted the silent, defeated Derek Vance from the room, a new era for Finch Tower began. In the weeks that followed, the story of the boardroom confrontation became a corporate legend. With the saboteur gone, the deal with Dragon Holdings was signed, a landmark partnership that secured the company's future and sent its stock price soaring. One afternoon, Mr. Finch invited May and Lily to his office. The sun streamed through the large windows, illuminating the room with a warm, hopeful light. I've been thinking a lot about the past few months, he said, his voice filled with a humility no one had ever heard from him before. This company was about to be destroyed, not by a competitor, but by its own arrogance, by its own blindness. He looked at Lily. You didn't just save a deal, Lily. You saved us from ourselves. You reminded me of something I had long forgotten. That wisdom is not found in a title or a corner office. It's found in character, in listening, in respect. He then turned to May. And you, Mrs. Chun, your quiet strength and unwavering belief in your daughter are the bedrock of this entire story. This company owes you a debt that can never truly be repaid. You have been very generous to us, sir, May said graciously. Generosity is not enough, he replied. I want to create something permanent, something meaningful. He slid a handsome leather-bound portfolio across his desk. On the cover, in elegant gold letters, were the words, The Lily Chin Foundation for Cultural Understanding. I am endowing this foundation with an initial $10 million, Mr. Finch explained. Its mission will be to fund scholarships, language programs, and mentorships for gifted children from underprivileged and immigrant communities. It will find the other lilies of the world and give them the opportunities they deserve. May and Lily stared at the portfolio, speechless. A foundation needs a director, Mr. Finch continued, a warm smile on his face. Someone with integrity, wisdom, and a deep understanding of what it means to build a bridge between worlds. I would be honored, Mrs. Chun, if you would accept the position. Tears welled in May's eyes. For years, her life had been defined by a cleaning cart, an apron, and invisibility. To be offered this, it was more than a job. It was a restoration of dignity. It was a chance to build a better world for children just like her own. Yes, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Yes, thank you. And Lily, Mr. Finch said, the foundation will, of course, cover your full education through to any university in the world you choose. But more than that, I hope you will serve as its lifetime honorary chairperson and guiding star. A year later, the world of Finch Tower was transformed. The Lily Chin Foundation occupied a beautiful, sunlit suite of offices on the 10th floor. May Chun, no longer a ghost in the hallways, was now one of its most respected executives, managing a growing team and changing the lives of children across the city. Lily was back at school, but her life was richer than before. She volunteered at the foundation, tutoring younger children in Mandarin and English. She still attended the occasional high-level meeting at Finch Tower, where her insights were now considered gospel. The executives no longer saw a child, they saw their secret weapon. One evening, May and Lily were leaving the tower together. As they walked through the grand marble lobby, they were no longer invisible. The security guards greeted them by name. Executives, heading home for the day, paused to say hello, to ask May about the foundation's latest project, to thank Lily for her help on a recent translation. They passed the main boardroom. The doors were open, and the cleaning crew was inside, the familiar hum of the buffer machine echoing out. Lily paused and looked in. She saw the great, polished table, and she didn't feel a trace of fear or intimidation. She only felt a quiet sense of gratitude. It was the room where she had found her voice. As they stepped out into the crisp evening air, May put her arm around her daughter's shoulders. "Are you happy, my flower?" she asked. Lily looked up at the towering skyscraper, its lights glittering against the darkening sky like a constellation of man-made stars. She thought of her grandfather, and she knew he would be proud. She had not only honored his lessons, she had used them to build a new world for herself and her mother. "I am, Mama," she said, her smile as bright as the city lights. "Let's go home." Thank you for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share your thoughts below. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Stay tuned for more immersive stories.